Welcome everyone to the Capture webinar on graduate recruitment strategies that make the Dean's List. This is Larry Ehrenberger. I introduced myself earlier. I will be your host along with Amanda Scott, and Jack Klett will be joining us with their wisdom and an understanding of what is taking place in the market today. Hopefully, when we are done, we will have given you a sense of some things that you have for takeaways that can serve you well with your internal conversations and also assist you as you move forward with your marketing efforts and the graduate environment. You've got a screenshot up there with all of those wonderful happy faces, glamour shots that are there. Quick background, Larry Ehrenberger, Senior Vice President of Partnerships here at Capture. You can see based on the number of places I have listed, I do have difficulty holding a job. No, I'm just kidding you all. 34, 35 years of experience across higher education in the recruitment world, and vast knowledge that sometimes gets in the way of real production of getting things done. So I'm going to turn things over to Jack first for introduction, and then to Amanda, and we'll get things started.
Thanks, Larry. Hello, everybody. I'm super excited about our conversation today. My name is Jack Klett. I'm Senior Enrollment Advisor at Capture. I've spent the vast majority of my career immersed in graduate studies. I've served in recruitment and admission and marketing roles for graduate education, as well as new graduate program development, graduate program administration, and teaching while Associate Dean of Graduate Studies. So collectively, it's been 12 years immersed in grad studies, both at mid-sized private institution in Pennsylvania and a large institution, a large public institution that's part of the Pennsylvania State System of Higher Education, and have been around the block a bit at some other institutions as well.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Amanda Scott, and I'm a Senior Director here at Capture Higher Ed. Today I'm going to be interviewing Jack because he has this long tenure in higher education, and my background is also in higher ed, about 11 years. I started out in admissions. I was a financial aid director. Then I spent about another 6 years doing client partnership consulting for enrollment. So here at Capture, I work with our graduate and online recruitment.
So Amanda and Jack, let's get the party started.
Right, here we go. So we want to first start out by looking at what does the graduate landscape look like for marketing and recruitment purposes. You guys work in it every day, but this is just kind of like a broader look at, we've got 2.9 million students in the area of graduate. Your top programs, obviously your MBA, your ed, your health services, all these are really important, but the one thing that we'll talk about a little bit is 78% of grad schools are offering online courses now. And so with looking at that, we're changing our landscape of how we're teaching to students, but are we changing our landscape of how we're recruiting to students to meet them where they are online?
Yeah, you know, one of the things, I think one of the great ways to frame the conversation, Amanda, is to talk about what the Council of Graduate Schools has put together in terms of the 2017 Pressing Issues Survey. So my fellow graduate deans probably remember completing this survey. CGS produces some really great stuff, and this survey is no exception to that. One of the things that we see when graduate deans are asked where are they going to be devoting a substantial amount of their time, we see that they're devoting a lot of time to kind of the shaping of a class or the shaping of a graduate cohort. So they're looking to promote diversity and inclusion in the graduate student body. They're also looking to provide leadership in graduate enrollment management. So we'll be talking quite a bit about that today. And one thing I want to point out is they're also working to secure institutional resources to support graduate programs. That's fundamentally important and critical when it comes to not only your ability to recruit, but your ability to recruit and enroll a group of students that really fits your mission in terms of diversity and inclusion. One thing I do want to point out that we're also going to touch on is 4 out of 10 institutions are seeing a decline in international student applications at the graduate level. And that is a bit concerning to see because of the importance of graduate education as a revenue stream for our institutions. So we'll be touching on that, I think, as well.
Absolutely.
And just a quick interjection, sorry, a little bit of logistics. I forgot a couple of things. We are recording this, so this will be shared with you following the presentation and discussion today. The other item is, as our assistant has done for us, for your questions, we welcome questions anywhere along the way. You have the web tool available to you at GoToWebinar, and with that, there's a box that you can send questions in, and we certainly welcome those as we move forward. So sorry for not identifying those logistics earlier, but we will have this recording for you, and please, question away.
Yes, please do. As I said, Jack and I are going to be having a conversation here, so we're happy to field any of your questions at any time. So kind of looking at the landscape, so 80% of institutions are likely to create additional grad programs, and 40% of them are not going to eliminate any of their programs. So while we're thinking about this is we're trying to figure out, what are the pressing issues, what's in the market, what's our market research showing us. And one of the huge things is increased competition, more pressure, limited resources, and
yeah, that's a great point. Increased competition. So all of us are creating more and more institutions, or all of us are creating more and more programs to service graduate students, and pretty much universally, we're not cutting programs. So we're just adding more programs and going after this pool of students, and it is pretty intense in terms of competition.
So we're going to dive into and we might be having a little bit of technical difficulty with the slide that you're looking at right now, but we're just going to keep talking. We're going to roll with it. It's captured.
That's right.
So we talked a little bit about what the market is telling us about themselves. And, Jack also has experience, and I've been doing market research within our own portfolio of partners. And the things that we think are the pressures are lead generation, political and economic climate, the increased competition, shaping the class, and limited resources. And, I bet that list is even longer than that, but let's just start out with 5 and go and go from there. So starting out, lead generation, man, it is hard to get grad leads because the student decision journey for a graduate student is different than an undergrad. So for an undergrad, you're typically buying your SAT, ACT, and then they go into this nurturing campaign for years until you get them to apply and enroll. And you have the GMAT and the GRE and the LSAT, but usually those are seen as like an entrance requirement. So you don't have this long nurturing process. Did you see that as an issue?
I did see it as an issue, and one of the things that is important to note about GMAT, GRE, LSAT takers, MCAT takers, is that graduate students, you're right, it's different than undergrad. So graduate students tend to be taking these tests when they already know which program and which school they're going to apply for, right? Increasingly, we see graduate programs that are not requiring the GMAT or the GRE, or they're supplying conditional admission for folks without taking that test, and based on performance, they can have that test mandate waived. So when we talk about kind of the more traditional approach of purchasing GMAT test takers or purchasing GRE test takers, we are purchasing a group who likely have already made a decision of where they're applying, and what we're trying to do in that case is convince them that they should be applying to us, right? So we're trying to get them to change their decision. And the fact of the matter is, we know that students who visit your site and inquire, right, so these organic leads, are far more likely to convert than anyone that you would purchase as part of a list source, right?
Right.
And the other thing, one other thing I'll say about that, Amanda, because I know we are going to drill in a little bit more about organic lead generation, but I always encourage folks to try to be as intentional as you possibly can in acquiring potential leads, right? When I was at Philadelphia University, we had a Master of Science in Sustainable Design, and just purchasing GRE test takers for that program would not have been effective.
Right.
So we encourage intentional purchasing. So Philadelphia has a sustainable business network. Here are folks who are business owners who are working every single day in sustainability. So we move forward, and I purchased that list, trying to create an environment where you're collecting potential leads that will really resonate with the program in terms of connecting what potential students are doing every single day with what they'll be learning in that program.
Right. Right. That's a really great example. We have an example at the University of Tennessee as well in terms of bringing in students organically. So this is showing a progressive identification form, just so you guys know so you can see what we're talking about. And, what is the difference in this and just having an inquiry form?
Well, it's a great point because it looks like it's an inquiry form, right? But an inquiry form is a static form that just sits there on your page. So a potential student is visiting your site. They click a Learn More link that takes them to a standard static inquiry form that is there. One of the things that is wonderful about marketing automation is I am able to track what an individual visitor is viewing on the website. I can see what interests them based on the pages that they visited. I also can know, based on their behavior online, when they are ready to opt in. So triggers can be set for marketing automation to create a pop-up like you see here for the University of Tennessee, Knoxville. This was an opportunity where, based on the student's individual behavior in terms of their visit, this dynamic content piece, this progressive identification form, pops up on the screen and is a short fill form. We can control when and how it's displayed. We can build and couple multiple data points, adding graphics, etc., and even shaping the specific questions that we're asking.
Right.
So a student's more likely to fill it out.
Mm-hmm. And the progressive nature on it is that the record can grow over time. So the whole point is you just want to start to figure out who that person is. Like I'm going to pick on Larry here. But if Larry comes to the website and I want to know more about him, he might only give me his first name and his email address the first time. And if he comes and visits later, we could ask him what program he's interested in. It's the ability to grow that record. Because, like you said, you can go out, so there's different sources here to kind of cap up the organic lead generation. Yes, you can still buy the traditional tests. You can buy the lists that support programs that you're referencing.
Yeah. Well, can I get back actually to that sustainable design example?
Yeah.
So the sustainable design example, when I was talking about the sustainable business network list. So, okay, we purchased that, right? And traditionally, we would just load that into our system and send out communications, send out email. Well, now we have the unique ability to create specialized links that we embed into these emails. So when we are sending out to this list and they're clicking on links in the email, what we're able to do is we're able to match their individual IP address with their identity. So now we know.
It's Larry.
Yeah, right, it's Larry, right? So now we know exactly who that person is, right? What they're viewing. And that's really important because now that we know individual members of this list are actively online, we can see exactly what it is that they're looking at and then serve specific messages that resonate with that individual student based on what they're interested in.
Right, and you did that at Bellarmine University as well.
Yeah, Bellarmine is a great school to work with, a great institution, a really fun, dynamic team. Bellarmine, we had great success with their graduate their graduate office, their graduate admissions operation in terms of getting organic leads. Bellarmine, we had a progressive identification form. You can see it right there on your screen in front of you. There were 6,642 unique impressions of that form. 332 organic leads were identified that would never have been part of a Bellarmine purchase source list. And we know, like I've mentioned, organic leads are far more likely to convert.
Exactly. So I'm going to take us on a swing here over into the land of politics, which can be a scary place to step.
You know, my graduate degree is in political
science.
Well,
I know, so you don't talk politics with Jack, okay, guys? He knows more than I do. But why we're going to talk about that is the climate. You can't step around that politics as well as economics, which are hand in hand a lot of the time, impact education.
Yeah.
It impacts the K-12 system. It impacts undergrad. It impacts graduate. So right now, what we're seeing in the research, there was a survey that went out recently in March from Inside Higher Ed that you referenced, about 4 out of 10 seeing drops in international enrollment.
Yeah.
And they also referenced that there were perception issues. There's a perception that there's going to be a rise in the denial of student visas. So it's kind of like a why even start the process if I don't think I can get into the United States.
Right.
And there's also the perception of the climate in the U.S. of being less welcoming. So I think we obviously can't fix these perceptions,
right,
but what we can do is try to influence the people in the countries that we're targeting for graduate recruitment in intentional ways, and we'll kind of dive into that in a little bit.
Yeah. I mean, these are those external forces that you simply can't control, right? So how do we deal with them, and how do we engage students in such a way that allows us to clearly deliver more welcoming messages? And that's the wonderful thing about marketing automation is students respond very well to seeing themselves at that institution. So we can use marketing automation in ways that allows the student, the prospective student, to imagine themselves as an actual student at that institution. The international perception, right, regardless of your politics, the perception that it's going to be difficult to secure a visa, the perception that once a visa is obtained, it's going to be difficult to keep that visa. That's troubling. Graduate schools have focused heavily on providing for a diverse global population. It's part of the educational experience. And also, I mean, to be blunt about it, international students do fill seats in our classrooms. And we need that to continue to support the revenue stream that graduate education can provide for institutions. So we have, I think, some examples of what we've been able to do. I know we still have to touch on kind of the economic climate, right, but maybe we can show that example of,
right.
There you go, you see it right in front of you.
So this is working with University of Toledo. One of their graduate enrollment areas that they wanted to grow in was from India. And so this student here is an example of what ad would be displayed through digital display if a student in India went and looked. And so what we're trying to show you here is that we want to have the look of the person be familiar to them. So there are people at the institution like me.
Right.
You want to build that diversity out. It might not always be an exact match for the country, but to show something that also has a message from someone that is similar to them, and then it kind of wraps through their journey. So we can serve them content through digital display, and then we would want to then show them content on when they hit the website, the school's website. Then you want to continue that story of serving them unique content to help them figure out how to get through those challenges of, like, you know, how do I get in touch with someone? Who do I talk to? What do I need? You know, what are all the entrance requirements to come from an international area? So,
yeah, I mean, it's content, right? I think you hit the nail on the head. It's content that is unique to that student. I know, right, because of what marketing automation can do, I know where this visitor to our site is visiting from. So that is an opportunity for us when we're engaging our international graduate population. It's an opportunity for us to be able to market to them in a way that says, hey, you are welcome here. In fact, don't take it from us, take it from a colleague, take it from a potential classmate.
Right. And one of the other climate issues that we've seen is the economic climate. I'll give you an example. When I was at Marshall University, we had just opened up a Master's of Education program, and that unfortunately collided with, in 2013, the state used to give raises if teachers received their master's degree. And both my mom and dad went on to get their master's degree because it'll bump you up this pay scale. Of course, you want to also get an education, but that carrot's out there. Well, that carrot was removed, and so you're thinking, how are we going to get teachers? This wasn't a principalship program. This is a teaching program. How are we going to get teachers to go through a teaching education program with no incentive of additional compensation from the state? So I was researching that program again, and I saw that now they're marketing it to prepare them for the National Board Certification, which is another way that teachers can be able to advance financially. So I think it is, of course, they've restructured the program to go towards it, but the economics and the atmosphere are something that everyone has to deal with, and you have to try to find your way to message around it.
Well, you do, and the economic realities also for graduate institutions is that we are adding more and more graduate students, but many of our institutions cannot just continue to add graduate assistantship opportunities.
Right.
So graduate students, for instance, are looking for funding. They're looking for assistantships. And while we're expanding and growing if I'm an institution, like for instance at Philadelphia University, where we were expanding and growing the sheer number of graduate students, we were not in a position where we could also add to the number of assistantships. So what you really have to do there, and what marketing automation can do for us, is it gives us the ability to message around the idea of affordability, so we can communicate those options that we have that are available to graduate students for them to be able to enroll in our institutions. But also it gives us the opportunity to really deliver home the return on investment
Exactly.
in graduate education.
Exactly. So changing gears a little bit, we touched on this really early on, but there's a lot of increased competition because, like we said, schools are needing to add programs to bring in revenue to the institution. So, and no one's actually getting rid of any programs. Right. So you're having to look for the alternative pipelines have never been as high to try to look for students.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we're seeing is that the need for alternative pipelines, right, has never been greater.
Right.
For institutions. And the fact of the matter is that innovation in graduate recruitment and graduate marketing is so necessary. There is increased competition, which we've recognized, but we really have to understand that we need to continue to transition out of the old, more passive graduate admissions model, right, where the graduate student would come to us, they'd fill out an application, and our process would kind of move that through and get them enrolled. What we need to do now is to be far more dynamic and proactive in what we're doing from a marketing standpoint, and marketing automation does a great job in terms of allowing us to do that. What's interesting, Amanda, is there was a Hanover research study in 2014, best practices in graduate student recruitment. Mm-hmm. Marketing automation and digital display, those lovely banner ads, weren't even mentioned. Right. In that guide. So, the time has come for us to bring and deliver messages to students when they're ready to receive them based on their behavior. All that can be captured.
And where they are. We're, like I said at the beginning, students are online a lot of the time in terms of their degrees and also on their phones.
Yeah.
I know myself. But we need to be where they are, and those messages need to get there. So with what we're looking at now, I wanted to give you guys some time to look at it. Google is finding that you no longer just have traffic coming to your site in terms of Googling out like Western Carolina University, where I got my master's degree. People are looking up keywords and phrases such as, for instance, if I was looking, I would say a master's in education online near me,
Right.
or near wherever my city was. I was in Asheville, North Carolina at the time, and I wanted a brick and mortar institution, but I also wanted the ability to take class wherever I wanted to. So that people are starting their search not by just going straight to the website, but there are other options. We've talked a lot about marketing automation, but you also need to have it figured out how when students are Googling you, how are you working to acquire those people through digital display. And we know that paying per lead is super expensive. The word, the MBA itself, if you try to go out and purchase that, it's going to cost a lot of money. So, you know, what are the ways around that? Search retargeting, email targeting, even Facebook targeting. All of these are ways that we're finding grad schools are starting to use their online digital presence to try to meet people where they are.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, checking their Facebook like 70 times a day. I heard that on the news. That's kind of astounding.
It is astounding. But I mean, think about it this way, right? So we'll use this criminal justice masters as an example. So I'm going ahead and I'm Googling criminal justice master's degree, and an institution serves up a banner ad to me, right, through something called search retargeting. So I go ahead and I click on that banner ad, and it takes me to their website talking about criminal justice. While I'm there, perhaps a progressive identification form pops up in front of me. It's asking for my name and email. I complete that. Boom. I'm now an organic lead, but I'm also identified, right? So now I'm known by name to the institution, and the institution can track and see what it is that I'm interested in seeing.
Right. We saw it at Stetson.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, we did see it at Stetson.
Where you come straight onto the site from Google, you hit the site, and then you're greeted with a toaster is the first thing that they see, telling them about the MBA program that they probably saw on a digital display ad or was one of the key words.
Exactly. So what we're seeing is that the search retargeting banner ad brought them to the website. They then go to the website. They're served a piece of dynamic content that will allow us to capture their identity. So then, Amanda, say they leave the website.
Right.
Well, now we simply have site retargeting. So since they've left the website, wherever they may be, wherever they may roam online, we're able to then serve up another banner ad that is potentially very unique to what their visit experience was.
Exactly.
on the institution site.
Exactly. And we'll look at an example of an actual student doing that here in just a couple of minutes.
Can I interrupt for a moment? We've had a couple of questions that have come in. One of them is a performance question about Google and the advertisements that are out there. Do we have any sense of value? Because I know we have some national stats, if you will, on click-through rates that we've used for our marketing purposes that are out there, and that's really the only thing that we have to go on is national click-through rates that we have relative to Google Ads or others at that point in time. And I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 0.007 in terms of the click-through rate, if you will, from paid advertisement that's happening out there. We don't see that level of performance. We actually see a higher level of performance given what we're doing and the interventions that we're taking while they're on the websites as well. A second question came in as well. It had to do with graphic images that are being displayed. And from our perspective, the images that are being used, these are all partner images that have been provided to us. So we're using the images that have been approved by the campus. So as you're looking at Stetson, that's here, the graduate program area, that is their image, and that's what they're using. So the question was really more around how do you attract diversity, or how do you be true to your mission? Those are all institutional decisions that we harvest the graphics and the files for as well. So sorry to interrupt.
No,
absolutely. Keep asking, you guys. So now we're going to talk about shaping the class. It seems from graduate enrollment, did you find when you were seated that most of your applications came in that were stealth?
Oh, yes.
Right.
Oh, yes.
Right. So how are you going to shape that class, Jack? I'm putting you on the spot.
Putting me on the spot. How are we going to shape the class? Well, I mean, let me kind of put it in terms of an example, right? I mean, we want to make sure that our applicant pools are meeting what we want our enroll pool to look like, in the sense that we talked about a diverse, inclusive student experience. And marketing automation gives us the ability to do that, because what we're able to do through things like progressive identification is to understand who the student is, what is unique to them, and then provide messaging around it. I want to give a little bit of an example in terms of kind of shaping the class from an occupational diversity standpoint, right? I worked with a program, a Master of Science in Disaster Medicine and Management, an online program. And by profiling the students over time who were enrolling in that program, we saw that we had a lot of emergency room nurses, we had a lot of EMT folks, and we had a lot of emergency preparedness professionals, folks who, FEMA types, right? Working for municipalities or for the state or for the county level. And what we wanted to do is to be able to message to them in ways that would resonate. So to give you an example, in this era of marketing automation, we would be able to understand exactly who those folks are, so we would know who the emergency room nurses were that were coming to the site. And via a popover or a toaster or perhaps a triggered email when they come to the site, we're able to deliver a message to them that resonates with who they are as a professional and why this program would make them better in that profession. The EMTs would come to the site and they would get a very different message, right? Because their occupation is different. So we want to resonate with them based on where they are professionally and how we can tailor their experience from a return on investment kind of standpoint, from a value proposition standpoint. How we can go ahead and tailor the message based on what's going to resonate with them.
Right, and you can also, something that I've seen is if you have groups that are in physical locations, such as you're trying to recruit, I'm going to pick on my husband, he works at John Deere. So say they have an agreement with a local university for graduate school, which they do, you could target the actual facility with digital display, GeoIP, so that you know where your feeders are coming from some of these professional areas that you talked about.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot of institutions at the graduate level that have partnerships with undergraduate institutions that will serve as feeders. And what you can do is, by knowing that geographic location, right, of that feeder institution, you can go ahead and serve content specifically based on geolocation.
That's awesome. So we mentioned earlier that we had a representation to show the journey of the student throughout all of this. And so that's what we're showing you here. This is a student at Biola University, and I say student because she started out as a prospect, and she was looking at ads, and then she would go away, and then we would get her with another ad, and then she ended up inquiring and applying, all through going back and forth between digital display to the website to progressive identification measures, which we talked about progressive ID, but it's also being able to send triggered emails, You can go as far as to do triggered direct mail out based off of their website activity as well. And all of that feeds into her personal story here on the dashboard, so that when your counselor is looking to communicate with this person, we understand what their journey has been,
Yeah.
what they're interested in, or at least what they've been looking at.
And that's an example of a powerful, individualized messaging loop, as
Right.
I refer to it, right? On again, off again, on again,
Mhm.
off again in terms of the site, but really powerful in terms of that individualized message tailored for that student is being delivered consistently.
Exactly. So I bet when you worked as associate dean 2 times that you just had a lot of money, and you could just do whatever you wanted to do with your budget.
I had tons of money, and I had the largest staff you could possibly imagine. Both of those things are not true. I was fortunate that as associate dean, both at Westchester and also at Philadelphia University, that I had really dedicated members of that staff who would work very hard, and I'm sure many of our listeners have teams just like that. Limited resources is a big issue in graduate, Amanda. It's a big issue, and it's fascinating because I had worked with an institution in Texas, and that institution, the graduate office, was charged with the same enrollment goal as the undergraduate office.
Mm-hmm.
The undergraduate office had far more money in their budget and also had far more staff. So to give you an idea, the graduate office had 20% less in terms of marketing dollars to work with, and compared to undergraduate, they had 3 staff members compared to the 10 in undergrad. And I think part of that staffing and resource model is a bit antiquated, because I think it's still assuming a passive operation where graduate students are coming to you. And we've argued through this that we need to be more proactive in what we're doing.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, really investing resources is important. But look, the reality, the financial economic reality is we can't do that, right? Many institutions cannot just snap their fingers and say, oh, we're going to give more money to graduate. And that's where managed service, Amanda, managed service is so important.
Exactly. So I like to look at it on an individual student scale as well, when you're trying to figure out how to use your human resources as well as like your physical materials that you have. And what I'm showing you here is what our daily visitor report. So any student that goes through the journey that we were just describing to the website with content served to them is received every day in this type of journal, and you can see what they've been, their tag cloud, and there's a couple of scores on here that you might not be familiar with. One of them is the affinity index, mm-hmm. and one of them is the engagement score, and those are both capture metrics that we came up with to give us the ability to understand with the engagement score, what are they looking at us right now? Are they interested in what we're talking about today? So a high engagement score means that Jack has been on the website and he is hot to trot and wants to know more right this second. Right. And then the affinity index, I'm going to pick on Larry again. He might have a low affinity index if he, over a lifespan, hasn't been a very engaged person with a website. But he could also have a high index if he has a longer use of peaks and valleys of coming back to the website over time, but have a low engagement score. So they kind of work in different ways, but why I explain that out is what is important is if you have a stack of view books on your shelf from last year that you're trying to get rid of about this time of year, you could pull a list of everybody with a high affinity index and mail them out to people who you know have been all over your website.
Yeah.
And you can also scale those 3 counselors that you had exactly. with a list of students who you know would be more beneficial for them to work rather than dumping a whole pool on their desk.
Yeah, I mean, that's a real value add in the sense that I'm working with an institution right now, a graduate school. They have 40,000 suspects, right, that make up their pool. 40,000.
Right.
They have a staff of 4 or 5, something like that. So how do you know who to contact? How do you know who to reach out to? How do you manage that team so that they're using their time effectively? So for many of us, we pick up the phone and we call folks, right, to try to get them to know about the value we can provide to them in terms of graduate education. Using these scores, using the daily visitor report, basically is giving each counselor a quick hot sheet so they know when they pick up that phone and they're making contact with that student is interested in them because they've been on the site, and the ability to establish the relationship and build that rapport is far more powerful.
So I think that we have a few questions that have come in. I just want to run through, just to cap us out, the things that we talked about today that we think are issues in the industry that there are solutions to are organic lead generation, the political and economic climate, increased competition, shaping the class, and limited resources. Larry, do we have any questions?
Sure, we've had a couple that have come in, and the first one is the application of marketing automation. We have graduate program, quote, large pool, but we have specific programs within our graduate offerings. Can marketing automation help me at the central level as well as individual program levels?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it can, and I completely understand where you're coming from, especially as you're trying to get students for specific programs. Very different messages, right, in terms of how you're going to communicate to students program to program. So we have the ability to serve dynamic content.
Segment it.
Yeah, and segment it out by program. We know where a student is going. So if a student lands on the MBA page, we can serve them MBA content that resonates. If they land on the criminal justice master's page, right, we know that has been where they have spent some time. So as they go through other areas of the site, we can still serve messaging that speaks to the value of that criminal justice master's.
Exactly. And the one thing is that how we use our marketing automation is it's a managed service, capture behavioral engagement, and Jack puts together for each of the partners that he works with a quarterly strategy document that goes through what are the challenges at each of the institutions and how are we going to use this tool to go after what you need to accomplish with your different objectives.
Yeah, I mean, no institution is the same, right? So everyone has individual needs and individual things that they wish to focus on. So that conversation is one of the things that I really enjoy about my role, is to be able to know what all of our capture bells and whistles and our wonderful tools can do, and then to hear what the challenges are by these institutions, and to be able to marry those two together in a way that's really seamless and powerful.
So just a couple more questions have come in, and thank you all very much for submitting those. If you haven't already, please take advantage of it. A question came in about application of resources. The question of the trade-off. Do you invest in human? Do you invest in online tools that can help you? What's the trend? What are we seeing out there at this point in time?
Well, I mean, I think the value of human beings is tremendous, right? We all do, and I'm obviously a big proponent of having really great people who are part of your team. But when you have those really great people that are part of your team, you need to give them really great tools to maximize their efforts. So it's always a balance, but I think it's important to note that when you are using technology in a way that really helps to empower what members of your team are doing, prioritize what they're doing, that's the perfect marriage. I don't know if that necessarily answers the question, but
yeah, it does. I mean, ultimately, if you have limited resources, if I had to give up a staff member for technology that would allow the rest of my staff to work better rather than looking at 40,000, actually looking at the 400 that are engaged with us. I may be able to handle that differently with 2 staff members focused on the effort there. A couple more questions came in. Speak, if you can, to the value of marketing automation, not just in the identification, the beginning stage of organic leads, but pushing people to come, to enroll, conversion.
Oh, yeah, yield. That's a hot topic. We definitely have a lot of strategy discussions with the advisory services team during yield season, so to speak, on how to get students to progress. So you can continue to serve either triggered content as they come to your site based on their stage within or their status at your institution. So if they are an applicant and they haven't sent all of their materials in, their scores or whatever you need to complete that application, you could know that about that student and then serve them with content either on the website, triggered email, triggered direct mail, triggered text message, all kinds of triggered things. I think you're getting the theme here. But yes, you can do it dependent on the stage that student is in their student decision journey.
Yeah. Let me give a quick tangible example. So one of the great things is we know based on status, right, based on enrollment status, admission status, where the student lies in their decision journey, right? Are they a prospect? Are they an inquiry? Are they an applicant? And then we can couple that with what it is that they're viewing and what resonates. So in the old days, like last year, we would have an established communication flow, right? It was just an established comm flow. Just say this goes out, 5 days later they're going to get this message, 10 days later they'll get this message. Now, so for an example, let's say one of those messages was speaking to the assistantships, the graduate assistantships that we have available, right? Well, now we can let the student's own behavior trigger when they receive that message. Mm-hmm. So that way, that message that is coming is far, far more powerful because we know exactly what it is that they're interested in.
That's a good example.
And that helps move them along in that process.
So thank you very much. Another question has come in, and again, thank you. This one is implementation of marketing automation. How long does it take for a .edu to be up and running with capture behavior engagement and marketing automation?
Well, it doesn't take long at all. In fact, we have a team here that works very closely with our institutions to make sure that code is placed on the site quickly. It's something that we provide. We are able, in some cases, we've had reports of institutions applying that code across their website in a matter of, under an hour, I believe.
Yeah, our current quote record is 18 minutes.
There we go.
That the content manager was in the room, had the code, put it in the footer, spread it across the page, game over. We're tracking immediately at that point in time. The other deliverables, the artwork, the graphics, the content takes a little bit more time and discussion because this is all an approval process with our partners that are engaged with marketing automation. So those items take a little bit more time, but to have code on, being able to see and intervene with your visitors, it's a very, very quick process.
Yep.
All right. A couple of other questions came in. We've shown you screenshots, okay? These are stills, if you will, and I'm leading up to the next take, if you will. We're going to be offering, at the end of this, we'll be offering the opportunity for you to join us on a live demo of marketing automation next week as we turn things around, and we thank you for attending today, and we send you the link to the recording where the PowerPoint will be and the audio. We'll also invite you to come and experience it real time with our partner, Post State University, which captures own demo site. So we welcome you to come and see what Faux State is doing for marketing automation. And we've got a couple more questions. Tailoring message. Oh, great. Clarification of what's the effective rate, if you will, with our marketing automation. Sorry, I'm trying to read this quickly. We've talked about email messages, we've talked about text, we've talked about toasters, banner ads, potentially that are out there. Effectiveness rate. How effective are these?
Well, they're very effective. I mean, we have worked with a number of institutions. So we have collected a whole bunch of data, right, on how effective. And we know that students who are served this type of content and interact with this type of content are 5 times more likely to enroll.
Absolutely.
5 times more likely to enroll.
So let's try this one out. We have somebody that's on our webinar today that they just started their grad program.
Wow, congratulations.
Yeah. So advice, what are the best tools that, as they look at resources invest, what do you recommend?
So I'm assuming that they just started their graduate admissions operation. Is that what you're saying, Larry?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Gosh, where to start, right? you just put this thing together. Where to start? So I believe strongly. I have a great team here at Capture. So you start with a great team, and then you start with, beyond that, you empower that team with tools such as this that will enable them to do a wonderful, wonderful job. So I think it starts with great people, but then the next step is empowering those people, and these are the tools that can help do that.
Yes, and also finding out what are the professional organizations that would fit the grad program that you just started, and getting your new staff members acclimated with the lay of the land, see what type of training opportunities there are within. I know when I was a financial aid director that there was like a new counselor type of training that you could do through the Department of Ed. So there's lots of different resources out there, and if you shoot us your email, we'd be happy to help collect a few things and send them over to you.
Absolutely. Another question has come in, a program, small program, graduate program. They want to grow, okay? But it's a little bit of, we need to grow before we have the money that we can invest to grow faster and quicker. Recommendations for a small program that may find themselves, and I call it chicken and egg here, in terms of I can't do that until I have more money, and I can't get there. So
yeah, well, I mean, I always used to make the argument to my VP of Finance, if you give me the money to do this, I'll pay for it. You know, it'll pay for itself a dozen times over.
Right.
So if you can make that argument, that's a great argument to make. I think that, you know, one of the things when you're talking about growth, and one of the reasons why I like Capture Behavioral Engagement so much, I always say to folks here, if I had Capture Behavioral Engagement, I would have gotten far more sleep when I was in the seat in charge of graduate enrollment. And the reason for that is because you will be shocked at the number of unique visitors who are visiting your graduate program pages. You will be shocked. And the reason why that's so shocking is because each one of those visits is an opportunity. It is an opportunity to turn that person from a stealth visitor into an identified visitor that you can then message in a way that will allow them to enroll in your program. How else would you have gotten that person's information otherwise? You know, the old days, like I said, we just would have gone out and purchased a whole bunch of lists, done a whole bunch of either direct mail or email, and that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. So this is a really powerful way to grow, to understand who is on your page, who's looking at your site.
Yeah, you know, the information that we have as we were looking at our undergraduate pool, was that in a quarter period, 3-month period of time, the visitors that were coming to the admissions pages were 4 times their enrollment goal. Mm-hmm. And these were people who were just organically coming there to look and to shop. They need to be engaged as well. So, you know, all of us, I shouldn't say all of us, most institutions run Google Analytics on their pages. So they know exactly where the people are coming from, pages that they're looking at. The one important thing that they're missing,
who are they?
Who are they? Exactly. Yeah. And through CBE and marketing automation, we're able to identify that. A question came in for people starting new programs or existing programs. Where's your best source of recruitment? And it may be those seniors that are graduating from you as undergrads.
Oh, absolutely. You know, when I was, many institutions, many graduate institutions, or many institutions who have undergraduate and graduate programs, those current undergraduate students are likely to make up a large percentage of your graduate student population.
Good.
I actually wrote a blog about that. So if you go through our capture blogs or shoot us your email, I'd be happy to send it over to you. It was kind of a thought into where our graduate students coming from.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Fantastic. Well, we are approaching the top of the hour, and we had planned to take just about an hour out of your lives today, and thank you all very much. Just a quick couple of items for you. We're going to be next month, for those of you who attend NACAC, which is predominantly for undergrad, but some of you have dual roles. If you're there, please stop by and see us. We will have a presentation by Dr. Tom Bolden on the student decision journey and what we're seeing with all the information that we're tracking as well. The webinar that will be, the follow-up communication coming to you from this webinar, from your attendance, we'll have the information for you to register for next week's active webinar. Yes, we'll have the slide deck for you. We'll have the recording link. And we'll also provide the resources of where we found much of the information that we used today to give background of the current lay of the land in the graduate programs. So with that, I want to thank you all for your time this afternoon. Amanda, Jack, thank you very much.
Thanks, Larry.
Our friends who are on the other side of the internet, on the cyber world out there, thank you very much for attending. We look forward to visiting with you, following up, and teaching you and helping you understand more about marketing automation. Thank you.
Thank you.